And welcome back, everybody, to the OHIO podcast. And as you see, we have been joined by our lovely guest, the Buckeye Football Fangirl herself, Lisa. Lisa, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I love your new YouTube format for your show. That's awesome that you guys are doing that now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, after 4 years of hearing our voices, we thought we would scare everybody with our faces. So we definitely
Oh,
upped we definitely upped the viewing pleasure, you could say, by bringing yourself on here. So thank you for adding a little bit more of facial credit to us today. We
Because we have faces for radio.
I don't know what you guys are talking about, but no, I love your show and I've been a fan for maybe 4 years. I've lost track of how long I've been listening to it, but maybe since you started, that's around the time when I started really kind of digging in and diving into more podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff like that was around 2019. So sounds like it's lining up.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, we appreciate that, and we moving up in the world, you could say. But we've also enjoyed, at least I have personally, I have enjoyed your YouTube channel. I love watching and getting a recap and a preview of the games. I think you do a fantastic job of that. It's always encouraging and enthusiastic, and I appreciate that. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the Buckeye Football Fangirl YouTube channel and where they can find it?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I have a lot of fun doing it. And like you said, I try to be positive. I try to be upbeat. Obviously, it's much harder after the losses than the wins. But I really enjoy being Buckeye Football Fangirl. I'm Lisa also. So anybody who's watching, feel free to, refer to me, Buckeye Football Fangirl, Lisa. I'll answer to both. But Buckeye Football Fangirl, you can find me on YouTube. You just type in Buckeye Football Fangirl, and I should come up in this search. And like Eric was saying, I do preview videos before the games. I'll do a recap of the previous game in that video as well, and just kind of sum it up. I like to also kind of pull in some tweets from fans, and I'll read some tweets that either happened during the game or maybe some reactions after the game, or even kind of some thoughts about the game that's coming up in my shows that I do. I typically do them once a week during the football season too, and just have a lot of fun doing that. And then I'm also on Twitter. You can find me, Buckeye Football Fangirl, on Twitter, where I'm just tweeting out random things throughout the week, trying to get people hyped up for the game, as I myself am getting very excited and hyped up for the game. And then I also like to tweet during the game usually. So not like a live tweet play-by-play breakdown, but more just reactions to the big plays and kind of the key moments during the game. So that's just a lot of fun for me. And I love just interacting with people on Twitter as well, other Ohio State Buckeye fans during the game. It just, makes it so much more fun for me when I'm watching the game here.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've just really gotten recently a chance to start watching your YouTube channel, and I love your positivity, because so often, and Eric will be the first to say, I'm not always the most positive person in the world. So, what motivated you to start the YouTube channel?
Well, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I really started to dive into listening to more podcasts and watching YouTube videos before the games in about 2019. And just more watching the game since I was doing that. And I always felt like, even though I would listen to so many before the game, like there was never enough. Like I would still have like a day or a couple hours where I just wanted to fill more time and more space with Buckeye content before, waiting for the game to start on Saturdays. So I created my show just as another outlet for people to be able to come and get pumped up for the game, get, excited for the game. I specifically wanted to not do as much of the breakdowns of players and plays and stuff like that, but just be a fun place where people could come and kind of provide a curated space where people could get excited for the game. I do try to keep it on the positive side, because I know sometimes it can get so easy to just get wrapped up in the negative, and but overall, I just try to keep it more fun and more positive for people who are watching and tuning in. And so I created it kind of like I was saying, just as another show for people to watch. And then it also gave me an outlet too to just be excited about Buckeye football and just kind of take everything that I was excited about when I was hearing, other people talk about Buckeye football on podcasts, and just also like have a place to share some of the things that I was hearing and learning and getting excited about. So that's really how it started. And it's kind of evolved from there, that foundation to what it is today.
Beautiful. So one of the things I noticed is through our conversations, you're on the West Coast, girl.
Yeah,
So
I am.
what is it like being a Buckeye fan all the way out there in Cali?
It can be lonely sometimes. There's lots of USC and UCLA fans around me because I'm specifically in Los Angeles. So, those two fan bases are pretty strong and prominent out here. But I do, I grew up in Ohio. So I'm originally from Northeast Ohio, born and raised for 18 years before, I went to college, and then I moved out here after college, and I've been here ever since. But it's definitely one of those things where I wish there were more Buckeye fans that I knew personally out here to watch the game with. Unfortunately, I don't have very many Buckeye connections out here. I have gone certain places and watched the games with some other Buckeye fans a handful of times in the past, but it's not something that I do regularly. But I think that's just another reason too why I love doing this show and I love interacting with people on Twitter, because it makes me just feel closer to Buckeye Nation as a whole, even though I am on the West Coast. But being on the West Coast and being 3 hours behind everybody normally when the game is being played, a lot of mornings I might roll out of bed on a Saturday and just be able to start watching Buckeye football at 9 a.m. So that's definitely something that's different watching on the West Coast. The late night games also are not as late night for me. So typically, for example, the game against Georgia ended at 12:01 a.m. on the East Coast, but it was only 9:01 here. So there's definitely that time difference that I've noticed, and sometimes I enjoy it more than others. Sometimes the 9 a.m. games can be rough, but if I do, stick to a normal routine and I get to bed on time the night before, that's the tricky part. It can be fun to just roll out of bed and be able to enjoy the game during, an early morning game there.
So before Chris asks the next one here, I'm going to jump in real fast, Chris. I mean, you had to be pretty ecstatic that USC and UCLA are joining the Big Ten.
Yeah, I was really pumped to see that and to hear that. And especially, all my USC friends and UCLA friends, we've been talking about it a lot. We're really excited. I think it's going to bring a whole new level of competition. Just me watching the game here whenever Ohio State ends up playing USC and UCLA, that's definitely going to be fun.
So did you say you went to school in California then?
I didn't go to school in California. So I actually did a year in Pennsylvania, and then I did 3 years. I finished up in Florida, and then I moved to California.
Oh, okay. So you grew up in Northeast Ohio.
Yes.
Did a year in Pennsylvania, did 3 years in Florida. In Northeast Ohio, I know you've got a lot of Pitt fans, a lot of Notre Dame fans, a lot of even Penn State fans. How is it that you became a huge Buckeye fan?
Well, you could say I was born and raised a Buckeye fan. So my family is pretty much, they're all Buckeye fans. My dad is a huge Buckeye fan, and that's where I learned to root for and love the Buckeyes. His dad was a huge Buckeye fan. He was also, I've heard stories about how, when my dad was growing up, his dad was a farmer, and he would take the radio with him on the tractor and listen to the Buckeye games, and depending on, if they won or lost, react accordingly. But yeah, I was just raised in a Buckeye household. I grew up watching the games with my dad and my brother. I wasn't as interested in the games when I was younger. It wasn't until I got a little bit older, kind of more teenager. And I'd say kind of the perfect storm happened where I was starting high school in 2002, and I was also a band geek, so I was going to all the high school football games, playing in the band there, but I got interested in kind of more into watching and learning about how the game was played and understanding what was going on during that time period. And it was also, obviously, the 2002 Ohio State team was a pretty good team, so I had a lot of fun watching them play that year and then go on to win the national championship. So that was kind of the perfect, I guess, segue into my personal Ohio State fandom, because ever since then, I had followed them and watched them, maybe not as closely as I do now. I would have my favorite players and root for them, but now I think I definitely get a lot into the granular aspects and learning a lot more about the players and specifically what's going on with a lot more of that now.
So where did you grow up at in Northeast Ohio, just out of curiosity?
Not too far outside of Youngstown, little kind of middle of nowhere town, but the biggest town in the area was Youngstown, so that's kind of where I hail from.
Well, I was just kind of curious if you had any players at your high school or anything like that may have moved on to Ohio State that you were.
No, not at my high school. My high school was pretty small. So it was one of those high schools where there were 100 kids pretty much in each grade.
Okay.
So 400 kids total in the whole high school. So we were pretty small as far as high schools go. So nobody that I've known personally has gone on to play at Ohio State, but just in general, just following my favorite players over the years has been fun.
Okay.
All right, Lisa. How about we ask you this question? So, since you talked to us a little bit about how you became a Buckeye fan, why don't you share with us and for the watchers and listeners maybe one or two of your greatest Buckeye memories?
Yeah. So when it comes to memories, I kind of want to take this two different ways. So I think just being a Buckeye fan and thinking about the memories of that, I think some of my fondest memories are just watching these games with my family. So with my dad, with my brothers, with nieces and nephews and sister-in-laws. So those are just some of my most cherished memories that I have, just looking forward to the game, watching it with them, celebrating usually after a win together. But then if we're talking specific football game memories or football play memories, I'd have to go back kind of recently to the Ohio State Clemson game, the last time that we played them and beat them. And it was just such a great feeling to win that game, especially after all of the Dabo being Dabo and ranking us 11th and all that happening, and the game the year before that brutal, heartbreaking loss. It was just so amazing to come back and just watch Ohio State stomp Clemson. That has to be one of my favorite moments ever.
Okay, so that's your favorite.
Yes.
What is your worst memory?
So worst memory. I have two for this too. So I'd have to say my absolute worst or least favorite memory would have been the Clemson game the year before that, when, it was that last minute, pass Justin Fields to Chris Olave, and Chris Olave runs the wrong route, and the miscommunication. And just they had it and they had a chance, and at the end it was just sucked out. And I remember crying after that game because it was so upsetting. And it was just a brutal loss. And then I think tied to that, just as bad, was the Michigan game this year. And I went to that game with my dad and my brothers, and I took my son, and that ride home after the game was just, it was awful. I try to take the positive out of any situation, and just being able, that was my first Ohio State game in the shoe. So that alone was an incredible experience, going to the shoe, experiencing the pregame, having, the excitement building up to that, it was amazing. Obviously, though, the game did not go the way we wanted it to, and it was just brutal, brutal. That ride home was, one of the longest rides after that. But so I'd say kind of top two worst memories are probably tied.
I did not know that was your first game.
Yeah,
Gosh,
it
I'm
was.
sorry, but at the same time, it's still like to see the shoe for the first time when you walk up on it and you see this just monstrosity of a coliseum that was built
Ugh,
almost 100 years ago, Chris, if I'm not mistaken. It's
It was
100
over 100
years.
yeah,
years.
100 years,
Yeah.
100 years
Yeah.
this year. Yeah,
They celebrated
that's right.
100 years this past season,
That's
and
right.
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that's how old it is. It's an amazing place to be.
Almost as old as I am.
Oh, not to rain on this pity party we're having right now, but I gotta ask you this question, Lisa. Do you feel like this season was a failure, given the expectations that we had as fans?
We have some super high expectations. I personally don't feel like it was a failure. Um, Obviously, never want to lose, to Michigan or TTUN. Never want to lose to them. Um, so that was brutal. But I do feel coming back, playing Georgia down to the wire, um, was an awesome showing for the team. I think coming out of last year, we knew there were major things that needed to be fixed. Still some major that need to be fixed going into this next season. But I look as a year for the defense where they were figuring so much out and implementing, the new coaches and a new style of defense, a new style of play there. I think it's just a lot. And while we didn't end with the national championship, which is always the goal as well, I think playing Georgia to the wire in that semifinal game, which probably should have been the national championship game, was an awesome showing by Ohio State. I think that game was an incredible game to watch as a fan, and even though it didn't go the way that we all wanted it to at the very end, there were chances to win it. I'm not putting it on that last minute. There were several other plays and chances to win it all throughout that game.
Right.
Mhm.
But I personally was proud of how the Buckeyes played. And I was happy with the fight that they played with the physicality that they showed during that game as well. I overall, I would have liked it to go a different way, obviously. I was proud and happy of the fight that we saw on the field that night. I'm curious what you guys think about that.
Chris?
Well, and
Long
I'm sure
sigh.
you've heard, we had a discussion about this right after the season.
Mhm.
We came away with no Heisman, no win over the team up north, no national title, no conference title. We were 0 for 4. That sadly, I've got to feel like that's a bit of a failure. I
Yeah.
really do.
I feel like
Yeah.
this team will be looked at in the same light as, what is it, the 98 team, Chris?
Yes.
The best roster, possibly one of the best rosters in college football, had everything set up there for you, and then you stubbed your toe in one game and it ruined everything for your season. And I feel that in a lot of ways what has happened to Ohio State in what was it, 2019? With the Clemson loss, when we had that great roster,
Yeah.
Chase Young, Justin Fields.
You know what?
Loaded
I put more of that Clemson loss
on the
on
refs.
forces outside of our control.
Right.
I mean, there was some of that this year versus Georgia, but I really do. When I look back at that Clemson game, that was a complete debacle.
I'm with you, Chris. I'm with you there. Ugh.
So, Eric, somehow it came down to me with this one.
Yeah,
We talked about it before the show.
it's how the planets align for you, my friend.
So we're going to go ahead and just kind of follow up with was the season a failure question with, do you feel that Ryan Day is the right guy for this job?
You guys are asking me all the great questions. These are all the loaded ones. And I feel like I have a pretty good pulse on how Ohio State fans feel about this. I feel like I listen to enough podcasts to know how the general consent or what the general consensus is around this. And I feel like my personal opinion doesn't always align with that, especially in this instance. I do really like Ryan Day as a head coach. I think there are obviously major blunders, such as the last 2 years of losing to TTUN, not pulling out this win over Georgia. Those are just the top two of mine right now that I would consider kind of the worst things on his resume. But overall, other than that, I think that what I've seen from him as a coach, I think he's learning and growing in the right ways. I think he's shown he has been willing to make big changes to the coaching staff, bringing in Knowles, kind of changing up almost all the coaches on the defensive side of the ball there. I think he is showing some growth in admitting that he sees and understands why he needs to step away from some of the play calling or being as involved in play calling in the future. Obviously, we don't know what that's going to look like coming up this year or the year after that, if that's going to be an immediate change he's going to make or something that comes around a little bit later and takes a little bit longer to actually play out. But I think just overall kind of those two things, I still like Ryan Day as the head coach. I think this year is a very big and pivotal year for him. And depending on how it goes, it could sway my opinion to the other side. But I am still on the side of I think he is the right man for the job right now. I think he has shown that he has areas he needs to grow in, but I think he's taking steps to try to grow in those areas and to try to make some changes and really step more into that CEO role as opposed to offensive coordinator, mastermind, play calling mastermind, which I think he's been really comfortable in. And is good at, obviously. But I still do think he is the man for the job.
So you and I are much closer together, Lisa, on this topic than Chris. Chris over here, he was ready to pull the trigger and fire him before he even got to the CFP.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think this is a very pivotal year for Ryan Day. And so on that note, let's turn the page and let's talk a little bit about this upcoming season. What are some things you're looking at this offseason, you're following, maybe some storylines or position battles or things that you're going to be watching this offseason in preparation for that 2023 season this fall?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is the quarterback battle. I'm not as worried about the offense, though, as the defense. I'm really, really like where I'm going to be focusing the most is just hearing what's happening on defense. The defensive side of the ball, I think, is the side that still needs to be majorly improved heading into this year if we want to accomplish those goals, if we want to beat TTUN, if we want to be Big Ten champs, if we want to win the national championship. I think it all hangs on the defense getting better. So I think hearing about how the defense is progressing during spring practices, getting a slight glimpse maybe into that during the spring game, and then hearing how it continues to progress over, summer practices as we're heading into the season. That's what I'm going to be most interested in, specifically, hearing about the secondary play. So hearing about, the cornerbacks and how they're progressing and who might actually be stepping up in that room. And who will actually be starting in those positions when we kick off the season against Indiana. So I think that's where my biggest interest lies heading into the 23 season. How about you guys?
For me, I'm being a big dude. To me, it's all offensive line. We have 2 returning starters in the offensive line. How's that going to gel with a new quarterback? We have all the offensive weapons there that you could possibly want, all the offensive toys. But if you don't have, number one, time enough to throw the football, it doesn't matter. And number two, if you don't have the guy who can get it to him, it doesn't matter. Now, I am extremely confident, like you, Lisa, in the development of our quarterbacks with Ryan Day. I think he's done a better job developing that position than anyone ever in the history of Ohio State, and he's only been here doing it now for 7 years, including when he was the quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator. So I'm not terribly worried about that, and I also have a good feeling about Coach Fry and that offensive line. I think he can coach these guys up, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're not done trying to look at the portal maybe to see who might come out of spring ball from another program who they might be able to grab and also bolster that offensive line a little bit. So you bring up a good one. Chris, what about you? What are some of your things?
For me, I'm actually going to agree with Lisa here. I'm going to be looking at that defensive side of the ball, specifically 2 things: the defensive backs and how aggressive is our defensive line. Specifically, that jack position with Sawyer, and are we going to see JTT putting up monster games like he did against Penn State?
I hope we are.
I mean, I think those 2 guys are obviously going to be the key to our pass rush. Also, I want to see what influence having James Laurinaitis back in the building is going to have.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, it's about the defense. I think that the offense is going to be okay. I think Kyle McCord is a very good quarterback. He's got chemistry already with our number 1 receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm with you, Eric. I think that Fry's going to have that line looking good. I got a lot of confidence in him after seeing his performance with the line last year. So, yeah, for me, it's all about the defense. So, that being said, one of the biggest things we have a problem with here on our show, Lisa, is what do we do to fill the time until the new season starts? We've done some movie reviews. We've done, of course, we get heavy into recruiting as we get further into the spring. But what do you do to fill the time with your YouTube channel during the off season?
Honestly, I kind of go radio silent during the off season.
I've noticed this.
You've noticed that, yeah. No, I don't do a lot, to be honest. I usually end this season because it's a lot of work pumping out videos, planning them, filming them, editing them, getting them up, planning the tweets, tweeting the tweets. Like, it's a lot. I tend to get a little bit on the burnt out side by the last game. So I've had about a month to just kind of breathe now, which has been nice. I'm feeling a little bit more refreshed. So I'm not personally going to be doing anything super public with my channel, though I am laying the groundwork for the 2023 season, and I'm really excited about what I have coming up for that. I will probably be obviously watching and commenting on the spring game once that happens. If there's any large kind of breaking news, I'll probably jump in and comment about it more on Twitter than on my YouTube channel, though. But I like to take the off season to just take some time off. Personally, I don't know why. I've just never been able to get super into following recruiting either. And so that's another aspect. I know a lot of other podcasts and channels do love following that and get into that a little bit more during the off season, but that's just not my jam. And so I just haven't really gotten into covering that either. I like focusing on the games, and that's really where I feel like my content thrives, and that's what I enjoy doing. But I am working on several things for the coming season. I really want to create, like I said, a curated space for those who bleed scarlet and gray. So one of the tweets I sent out during this past season was just asking for podcast recommendations. And that got such a huge response that I want to do something with this. So I'm going to build some sort of a directory where people can go and just find where some of these great Ohio State podcasts are, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube channel or something where people can just go and listen to it before the game. So that's one of the things I'm going to be focusing on, some additional resources I'm hoping to build out within that as well. And then just getting ready for the 2023 season. I'm hoping to bring on a couple of sponsors. So if anybody knows anybody, I'd love to get connected, but that's just a personal goal for me and my channel as well, going into the 2023 season. And then just really getting ready to hit the ground running as soon as we start to get into August. I'm going to be starting to do videos again then. But I know it is a challenge to fill that space in between the last game and then the first game of the next season. But I don't do a whole lot.
I understand needing a break, and nobody needs a break more than Eric, because he's doing all the same things that you're doing, and he's managing a team of hopeless losers underneath him.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but Eric, I feel like it's a lot of work.
Our little group all in line.
Oh, you ever heard that saying, the blind leadeth the blind? They both fall in the ditch. I'm pretty sure we're about our hands are up here trying to get help from you, Lisa, to help us out. But I'll say this, if you ever get the itch during the off season and you want to talk, you are more than welcome to always come on the OHIO podcast and talk Buckeye football with us, Lisa. We truly appreciate your channel, and I want to encourage everybody out there, make sure you go to the Buckeye Football Fangirl channel on YouTube. Like it, subscribe, ring the bell so that when she drops a new video on you, it'll let you know, hey, she's got a new video for you to watch. And I love your idea about creating curating a spot for all of the Buckeye content that's out there. There's some places out there that try to do that, but it's not Buckeye focused. And so they just grab different things from Google here and there and throw it together. And so they have things on there that haven't posted an episode for 3 years. And it's like, why is this even here, right? So someone goes there, and the last episode was from a Michigan State game in 2020. So it's like, come on. But I love that idea. And, of course, we would love to be a part of that as well. But we're going to end this portion of the interview. And thank you so much again, Lisa, for coming on and being a part of this with us. But I've got to ask the question. It's the question I ask everybody, and I always love the answers that I get. And so now it's your turn as the Buckeye Football Fangirl. What does it mean to Lisa to be a Buckeye?
What does it mean to be a Buckeye? So for me, I guess I'll start with I love being a Buckeye because of the camaraderie that you feel with other Buckeye fans. I think that, the football players talk about the brotherhood and how strong that is for them. And that's one of the major pulls and reasons why they end up going to Ohio State. But I think there's just such a camaraderie amongst Ohio State football fans and Buckeye football fans that whenever you see or you meet another Buckeye football fan, there's just this bond that you have between them. You just know you guys have been through the same highs and lows over the team over the past, however many years. And there's just something that bonds you guys together, especially, me being out on the West Coast and not being surrounded by Buckeye fans like I was when I was growing up. If I'm out and I'm wearing my Buckeye gear and somebody says like OH, and then, it's just so much fun to respond back IO and then just kind of connect. Or, sometimes I'll be wearing my sweatshirt, my Ohio State sweatshirt, and I'm out and about and somebody will be like, yeah, go Buckeyes. Are you going to watch the game or something like that? And so it's just, it's so much fun. Like being a Buckeye, I think just means like you have that camaraderie and that bond with so many other people, no matter where they're located. They can be spread out, around the country, around the world even. And it extends so much further beyond, the great state of Ohio. I think that's really kind of like the core of my favorite parts of being a Buckeye and what being a Buckeye means to me. Yeah, so I want to throw that question back to you guys. Have you guys ever answered this question?
Oh, I don't think we have enough time to answer this question for me. It is
Man.
it is I tell you what, Lisa, I tell you what. We will have a special episode this off season where I will go into why I even ask this question. How about that? Because I not to make things political or religious or anything, but outside of Ohio State, outside of
It's a
my
calling
faith,
here.
outside of my faith and my family, Ohio State has brought me through a lot of bad times in my life.
Mm,
And so having a community to be a part of
yeah.
that no matter what background you come from, no matter what you're going through in your life, when you hear that OH, you're in it. You know,
Oh yeah.
it's got to be an IO, you know? So
Oh yeah.
I love that aspect of it, and I will promise I will have an episode this year, this off season, where we attack that very topic personally. So we just don't have
Awesome.
enough time for that tonight. But hey, thank you so much once again for coming on and being a part. And I truly mean this. You need to vet and you need to get something off your chest and off your mind. You can come to the OHIO podcast, and we will offer you a platform to just let us have it. Because I'll tell you, if you get a little upset, Chris is going to jump in there with you. I promise you.
Nice. Nice.
One argument with one Michigan fan, and I've never heard the end of it.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate the invite and the chance to just come on your show and be a part of this channel. And I will definitely let you know whenever that time comes up in the off season. I appreciate that, Eric. So thank you, Eric, and thank you, Chris, for having me on here. This has been really fun.
Oh, it's been
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun, and we're so glad that this medium was made available to us so we can do this very thing. And so all of you out there, thanks for watching. Make sure you do hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, and all of those good things so we can continue to grow and find more great Buckeye fans out there just like yourself. And remember, be kind to one another. I owe someone's OH. Until next time, OH!
IO!
Yo!
Go Bucks!